Me being in the industry now 15 years, I have now in the past 2-3 years seen a much larger amount of brokers being involved in quoting brokerage container drayage services compared to 2, 3, 4 years ago, where it was more predominantly local brokers, local customs brokers, local forwarders. Now it's companies in Indianapolis, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles reaching out to a South Florida drayman asking for a drayage rate. Hey, transportation community, this is Luis Lopez, aka the Freight Guru. And this week, episode 24, we're going to be talking about how to build direct relationship with drayage carriers. I've been doing drayage local last mile in the South Florida area for over 15 years. And I'll be honest with you, I have never seen this type of demand. I have never seen this demand in brokerage outside of the Florida local demographic freight forwarding and brokerage market looking for local drayage carriers. I have never seen the amount of influx of import containers into the port, and it's not only South Florida. I have daily, weekly, and monthly conversations with brokers, freight forwarders, and large BCOs about the current state of the drayage market. Now, let's go back 3-5 years. Drayage, cottage-based industry, something that not a lot of people were taking really seriously, weren't building a database of local drayage carriers. And in reality, for brokers out there, always focus on over-the-road trucking companies, building databases for those over-the-road carriers. Now, looking at 2020, 2021, I am now seeing large brokers procuring drayage carriers in local regional markets. And by doing so, I'm now seeing more demand for local drayage carriers. So it's not only the local broker and the local forwarder in that local area procuring drayage carriers. It's brokers, forwarders outside of that local area procuring on Google, directories, and looking for drayage carriers. So the first thing I want to discuss today is where can you go direct and find drayage carriers? And I think that there's one specific website that I think you can eliminate the broker and go direct if you're a shipper or BCO and go directly and find drayage carriers in your local market. And I want to look at that now. Okay, so using the best directory to find drayage carriers. I think there is one direct source on the internet to find the best directory. And the reason why using Safer or going onto FMCSA is not ideal is because the FMCSA doesn't separate intermodal or container drayage from intrastate or interstate transportation. So it'd be no way if you look up a carrier on FMCSA to know if they are a over-the-road carrier or if they're a drayman, depending on looking them up on FMCSA. Drayage Directory, they do a very good job of reaching out to carriers in every local port and specifically getting information on those carriers and updating that information on a monthly and quarterly basis. So the great thing about Drayage Directory is that you'll be able to go directly to the source and find every drayage carrier in the entire United States near to the port that you're looking to procure drayage carriers. Now, doesn't mean that you're going to be guaranteed capacity, because capacity is something that's not guaranteed in today's market as is a carrier market. But I am sometimes dumbfounded by how many brokers are reaching out for drayage rates, where in reality, with Drayage Directory, you could go direct onto this website. And if you're a shipper looking for drayage rates, or if you're an Amazon reseller, or if you're Amazon FBA, you could go directly onto drayage.com and you can find direct drayage carriers and eliminate the premium of paying for a drayage brokerage premium fee and going directly to the drayage carrier. Now, it does make sense if you're working with the freight forwarder and they're handling the ocean freight and the customs clearance to allow them to handle the brokerage and maybe pay a premium on top of that drayage fee so that you could just get one invoice and eliminate the back office. And if you are a small shipper, I can also understand if you hire a over-the-road brokerage firm to handle your over-the-road trucking and transloading, to also handle your container drayage, part of that cross-docking into the over-the-road trucking. So I'm not completely against brokers getting involved in container drayage. But when I look at me being in the industry now 15 years, I have now, in the past 2-3 years, seen a much larger amount of brokers being involved in quoting brokerage container drayage services compared to 2, 3, 4 years ago, where it was more predominantly local brokers, local customs brokers, local forwarders. Now it's companies in Indianapolis, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles reaching out to a South Florida drayman asking for a drayage rate. And most of these companies are going on to drayage.com, just like you as a shipper could, and reaching out and saying, hey, can I get a rate? So you could bypass the broker and go on to drayage.com and do the same thing that they're doing if you wish to do so. And I think drayage.com does a great job of updating that information, providing an email of that drayage carrier's rates email, as well as the amount of capacity that they have, how many trucks they have, and what type of niche services they provide, such as cross-docking, hazmat certification, bonded, etc. So I think that's a very, very great way of procuring drayage services in today's market and eliminating brokerage services if you wish to do so and save a little bit of money while doing so. Now I want to talk about the current state of the market and looking at how intermodal volumes are exploding in today's market and how I don't believe this is going away anytime soon. We're getting ready for the holiday season, and DAT just came out with an article that it's funny we're doing this episode today. Port congestion top of mind as holiday imports begin. And that's August 3rd, 9:31 p.m. by Dean Croak. And he's talking about, and I'm going to put this on the podcast today so you guys can look at it, talking about how volumes are only increasing and that you're going to have to expect increases in these volumes for the next third quarter, fourth quarter into 2022. So if you are thinking that things are going to get bearish in the third, fourth quarter, I highly, highly doubt it. You're going to see volumes stay steady through the third and fourth quarter. So building relationships with your carriers and paying them on time, building communication, steady communication is going to be paramount going into 2022. Next thing I want to talk about in today's market, which is something radically different that we have discussed in previous years, is being sensitive on price. In today's market, which is a carrier market, it's not really about nickeling and diming and trying to squeeze the carrier out of a rate. When you have a carrier that has capacity, you're going to want to capture that capacity over capturing a rate. If the carrier has capacity, you're going to want to capture that capacity immediately and not try to nickel and dime on the rate. Most of the times when carriers are willing to negotiate the rate, at some point you're going to compromise service, because when it comes down to container drayage, there's two caveats that anybody that does B2B container drayage across the United States knows is a very, very sensitive topic that can lead to very, very difficult situations with your customers towards the end of the life cycle on the final or first mile. And that's per diem or demurrage, right? So when you commit with the carrier a booking, either an import or an export, and that carrier fails you, and it's the last free day on an import, and now your container is left in that terminal, you're going to have to pay storage past that last free day. Vice versa. If you have a booking for export and the carrier leaves the container at your customer's facility past the 4 or 5 days that you're allowed to have the container outside of the port, the steamship line will charge you for that container, 20 or 40-foot container, to be left outside of the terminal for those extended days. And those costs, you're either going to have to absorb them yourself, or you're going to have to reach out to your direct customer and explain to them that the carrier, if you're a broker or a freight forwarder, that the carrier dropped the ball, didn't have capacity, and now you have these additional costs. And those things are going to be probably more expensive than the $10, $15 that you squeezed out of the carrier in order to improve your margin. So with that being said, I recommend, if you're going to go out and you're going to go on Drayage.com and you're going to go out and you're going to quote 3 or 4, 5, 10 different carriers, try to get the average. Don't ever go with the cheapest carrier. Go with the guy somewhere in the middle when you quote. Hope that you can get that guy somewhere in the middle to provide you capacity. And then when you actually get your order from your customer, you're going to have to work somewhere in that middle with the drayman that provides you that third or fourth quote average, and book it with them. And you're going to have to be very transparent and provide communication with that drayman throughout the process and build a relationship from start to finish. And by doing so, you're going to have that relationship be built on trust and on the basis that you're putting everything in writing, and that you're on top of their shipment with them, and you're a partnership with them. You're not leaving them out to dry, right? Because they are overwhelmed. They're getting more emails than they've ever had before. They're dealing with the driver. They're dealing with the terminal. They're dealing with the steamship lines that are telling them, oh, by the way, we no longer can take that empty container back into the port. Now you're going to have to, take that empty container into a depot. So there's a lot of challenges for carriers today. And I'm not making excuses, but as a freight forwarder, broker, you gotta work as a partner with these carriers in order to take that capacity and allow them to want to work with you. The other thing that I also recommend, if you are building a relationship with a first-time carrier, an example that I see a lot of is you have a dedicated carrier you use constantly, and this week he just doesn't have capacity. He either has a couple drivers that are on vacation, or he just overextended himself. So you go on to Drayage.com and you go out and you start quoting around. Well, you find a carrier that has capacity and you agree on that rate. It's going to be a premium rate, but you're going to satisfy your customer. Okay, well, when you reach out to that carrier and you agree on that rate, don't assume that carrier is going to give you terms on that isolated shipment that you've never worked with them on. You have to assume and ask if you're going to get credit. Ask if you need to fill out a credit application. Ask if you can pay 50% up front. Ask if they're only doing prepay. A lot of these carriers are not doing terms for new customers because they understand that the demand is greater than what they can supply. So don't assume that you're going to get terms, because then you've created a delivery order, you've had them fill out a carrier packet, and they're telling you now, once you've already provided them the delivery order, hey, by the way, we're not providing you terms. So don't assume that terms are going to be provided. Ask the carrier before you provide them the delivery order, hey, how do you work? Do you provide terms immediately to every broker or not? A lot of carriers are savvy. As a broker or freight forwarder, even if you have a bond, the bonds, you're not allowed to file a bond for container drayage if the actual container is not crossing state lines. So these bonds with brokers don't work if the broker decides not to pay the load. So a lot of these carriers, especially local carriers, have been burned by brokers across the country where they do a load for a first-time broker, they don't get paid, and they decide, you know what, we're not going to provide terms to brokers outside of our region. We're only going to do prepay. So don't assume terms are going to be provided. Ask the carrier, are terms going to be given? Or what are the ways that we can pay you? There's a lot of different ways to do this. You can get 50% paid up front. There's pay cargo. You can do credit cards. You can always dispute that credit card transaction if the service is not provided to your liking. There's different ways to do it. So ask and don't assume. Communication and advance notice. If you have an import container coming into the port, you have to let the carrier know 5 days prior to vessel arrival at minimum. Ideally, 7 to 10 days prior to vessel arrival. Most carriers are booking 2-3 weeks in advance. Don't assume that you're going to have your carrier that you've been working with for 2-3 years have automatic capacity 2-3 days prior to when you need capacity. Provide communication when you have the communication. Get ahead of it so that you can eliminate having the need to go out and outsource a carrier that you're going to have to pay a premium rate with and possibly prepay or build a new relationship with. Now, I do agree that it's never a good idea to only have one vendor for drayage right now. You should have 3-4 different vendors. And with Drayage.com, you know every area, and all those carriers out there that are on Drayage.com, they've been vetted. And you can reach out to them and you could build a relationship with all these carriers. But right now is probably not the time to do that. The carriers you have relationships right now with, you want to make sure you stamp those relationships, you keep them solid and concrete, and you provide the best communication possible to make sure that you set up these carriers to provide you and your customer the best possible service within the timeline that you're expecting that service to be done. So if you get an arrival notice, provide that arrival notice to your carrier immediately. Don't wait to the last minute. Don't procrastinate. If it's an export booking, provide the booking immediately to your carrier. Don't wait 2-3 days prior to the booking cutoff. Provide that information immediately to your carrier so that they can start staging and pre-advising and scheduling prior to when you want to schedule your import or export booking with the receiver. So these are really, really vital things that maybe a year ago we all weren't doing, and I understand that. But you know what? The climate's changed. COVID has changed a lot of things. There's a lot of demand, and we need to pivot. It doesn't mean that it's going to be forever, but I can guarantee you Q3, Q4, this is our market that we're working on. And this is not a mode of transport that there's an influx of new carriers coming in. I don't see a lot of new carriers getting into drayage like you see in OTR or in last mile delivery. This is kind of like a very cottage-based industry where the draymen that have been doing this or have been doing this in the second, third generation. So you don't see a lot of new capacity coming into the market. So with that being said, you really need to understand that the capacity that's currently in that market, it's probably what's going to be there in the next 2 quarters. So work with your carriers, build relationships with them. If you have to prepay, understand that that's the cost of doing business in today's market, and communication is paramount. Another challenge that I see, and I've been noticing this, it's gotten better, but it's something that I myself get very frustrated with, is a lot of carriers in drayage want to embrace technology. And they want to automate a lot of the Excel spreadsheets and outdated ways that 10 years ago, we were just accustomed to do things. So my personal experience, 10 years ago, I was doing everything on Excel spreadsheets, printing out delivery orders and handwriting updates to provide to the customer by email. About 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to digitize and make an Uber-like platform, and I started that with Truck Hub. And in reality, a lot of the visibility that I provide today to my customers have it immediately available to them with a username and password through their portal. But we still have a very, very large amount of friction with our freight forwarder-based customers and brokers wanting to log in or simply click a link on their email to see real-time status updates on our TMS platform. Mainly because most customers are used to manual updates and picking up the phone to get an update from a drayage carrier. They're just not comfortable with believing that a drayage carrier can automate and provide real-time visibility through a platform and that it's actually the real information that they're seeing on a screen. So with that being said, I find this to be the most frustrating thing of 2021. The fact that the cost of labor is going up. There's a lot of manual processes that drayage requires. And Truck Hub TMS, for example, which is a TMS that we use every day, is doing a lot of the automated processes for us so that we can focus more on the things that we cannot automate. For example, that one of the challenges that we face every day is the steamship lines and terminals deciding that empty containers can no longer be delivered to a certain terminal and that from 1 minute to another, they have to be delivered to a certain depot. And even though the driver has been waiting 3-4 hours at the port, they just decide, oh, we have to deliver it to another depot. So those are the things that our staff in customer service and in dispatch need to pivot immediately, not provide updates that in reality our TMS is doing through AI and through automation. So we're trying in a very nice way and with real-time visibility, trying to provide our customers automation so that they have all the information our customer service and back office has in real time. But for the most part, 60-70% of our customer base just doesn't feel comfortable that the information is valid. So I think as the industry evolves, this will change. Most of our customers have been in the industry 30, 40 years, and they're just used to doing things a certain way, and I get that. Can't change everybody overnight. But the one challenge that I think over time, and I think COVID and these massive delays at the port will speed up, is the ability to use technology to provide more real-time visibility in an industry that is probably 20, 30 years behind other modes of domestic transportation in the United States. OTR transportation, last mile delivery, home residential delivery, all that has been automated, where most of it is all through AI and all through TMS platforms that are web-based. I mean, in reality, if I can get on an Uber platform right now and book a car and track it, I should be able to track a container or track a package and at any point in time that I would like. And we would like to do that with containers, but customers just don't believe it's possible. And these are B2B customers that are in front of computers every day. So with that being said, many local drayage carriers are now seeing that there are TMS platforms and cloud-based platforms that are subscription-based that are allowing them to reduce redundancies like Excel spreadsheets and manual paper that eliminates back office, that is costly and requires a lot of redundancy. So give these new cloud-based TMS platforms a chance. I promise you won't regret it. Finally, a recap, right? The key here is allow time for planning. Also, build trust with your carriers. By building trust with your carriers, you're going to build a solid foundation where you'll be able to not only negotiate volume, but eventually you'll be able to negotiate price. Because carriers, especially draymen, are loyal. They're looking for volume. They rather deal with one customer with 20 containers a week than 20 customers with 1 container a week. They want that consistency. But with that consistency comes a price, and it comes with challenges, right? So you have to work with your drayman as a partner. You got to come together, and you have to understand that there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, and there's a lot of different factors that draymen cannot control that are going to be part of this relationship that you're building together. So I have 3 ways to break the ice with your drayage carriers. And this is a local, regional demographic, and every region is going to be a little bit different. Every time that you build a relationship with a drayage carrier, I think these are 3 things that you could break the ice and you can get going with a solid foundation to set up a relationship that can last a lifetime. Don't assume you will get credit. Ask first. And if it's prepay, take a leap of faith and prepay. Build trust and loyalty. Be transparent with your customers and be transparent with what your customer demands are. So these are 3 things I think will build a solid foundation and build trust. Guys, this is the Freight Guru. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe to the link below, and I'll see you guys next week.